Guys, this is a what if video I'm probably barely going to be able to make, and I don't even know if I'm going to be able to post this very well, but let's go. What if Escanor, the lion son of pride from the 7 deadly sins, was a shield hero from 7 deadly sins? From the Rising of the Shield Hero. So we start off this entire thing with Escanor's death. Saddest moment in anime. The Black Air Force King had passed. Now, there's going to be a slight little change. These are the clothes he's going to be wearing. These ones as well. He has a bag on him in this version. So in this version, we're going with when he dies. Small change, he's going to have a bag full of clothes. And the last thing he did was pick them up saying, "Y'all won't be needing these anymore." As after he was finally done, he had them in his side when they burned to ash with him. And being that this bag was on him when he died, as well as Rita, which was in his hand as it melted down, as the handle melted down as it went in the ground, the tip did at least, as a final resting place for Rita, as in no one else could pick the thing up. They could, they just didn't want to. So when Escanor arose, he had his axe in his hand, but it was tasing him. It literally was electrocuting him. But his grip wouldn't let go of the axe. Then it merged into his shield. Not the basic copy thing, because he can't do that, it's an axe. He's a shield hero. It merged in, and he's like, what? He already has a second weapon? And then Escanor is looking down at everyone saying, "Who are you? Where am I?" This place doesn't feel like, as he started naming off Leonis or any of the places he's been to. Was this the afterlife? If so, why was he being electrocuted by holding his axe until it vanished? Where is his axe? And then he was told to look in the whole thing, and he didn't really know. But he was going to find out why his axe vanished and where he was. And being that he shows zero respect to kings, you gotta earn that guy's respect. He didn't care if he was a demon king, king of a country, anything. He whooped anybody. So, yeah. When he was given an audience with the king, because these 3 pretentious little turds who look like children to him, which they're teenagers, but they're grown. At least all but one of them is a grown man. And Escanor, he's twice the age of the oldest one out of them. As he took a single step and it almost cracked the castle. And then he weakened his power tremendously by holding back his step. Because where he was transported, it was noon. Literally everyone was almost lit on fire when he was summoned. But he didn't care. He honestly doesn't. So whenever they wind up, he just wants to speak to whoever's going to tell him where he is, and what's going on. Why he has a shield on his arm, and why he's got all his gear still. His armor, his axe. He still has his axe. It's just in his inventory. And he already checked that out when he first woke up. And he didn't fall on his face the same way Nafumi did. He literally landed feet in the ground, this pose. The only difference is he's got Nafumi's shield on his hand. Only individual difference. And whenever he walks and meets the king, it was oh, the sword hero, the spear hero, sword hero, bow hero. When he went to ignore the shield hero, Escanor simply said, "You've forgotten me. Something you shouldn't do again." Almost terrifying the king hearing this. He's like, this pretentious man thinks he can tell me what to do. I will have him killed. But he's thinking this in his head. He's not actually going to say it in front of Escanor. And then he said, "Alright, shield hero, what is your name?" And then he says, "Escanor." Stronger. As he says, "My name is Escanor of the 7 deadly sins. Lion sin of pride." and the pinnacle of all races. Hearing this, just feeling the pretentiousness of this guy annoyed the king. Like, he didn't know who this guy was. But Escanor, he's a prince. Granted to a land not even in that world anymore, but still, he's a prince. So, and then he states this as his final thing, and prince of so-and-so country from his home world. Hearing that he's royalty actually impresses the king. Alright, back to the what if. So, hearing that Escanor is actually a prince impresses the king a little bit, but not enough for him to go, oh, I was wrong about him. But he actually thinks this makes a little bit of sense now. Now, what he means by this makes a little bit of sense is this guy, of course he would have this kind of personality. He's royalty. Well, at least it would make sense if he was in his own nation. But then the king said, oh, you're royalty. It makes sense for your pompous attitude then. Mind you, you're not in your country then. Yes, I know. And it took a few hours of getting talked to them and all that. And Escanor was actually surprised, because when they said about because they talked about his stats, and everyone named off their stats. Spear Hero had a little bit of attack, a little bit of defense, all that. And then whenever Escanor noted his attack was 60,000 currently. They're like, what? Even max leveled heroes have only ever been shown in the past. And that was the Spear Hero who set the record at 100,000. And he was at the strongest he had ever been. And that was him using his most powerful attack. This is his actual regular attack power at 60,000 and well, slightly decreasing. And Escanor, who's been with them the whole day, they noticed at nighttime he started to shrink a little bit. Which there is still some adverse effects of the fact he got reincarnated. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. So the effects are that he doesn't lose power. Well, he does, but when the moon is out, it actually reflects a good bit of the sunlight. And he notices that his power is much higher than it usually would be. He noted that when his regular power is in the nighttime is 15, but here his power is still in the 20,000 range. And then they said, can you tell ours? And he said yes, stating very low numbers to them each. 15 for each of them. And then stating what they'd be each in. And it's like, it kind of surprises each of them, like, you said yours over 2,000 in each though. How did you get such a boost from having a shield? How can you tell? It's like, this shield doesn't give me a boost. It's because I am Escanor. In my world, magic is commonplace. And then he's made a complete sun in his hand. Even though my power is only at 2,000 at the moment, I can still make the sun appear. And if I was to send this up in the sky, in the middle of the night, and use a large enough amount of magic to open it, I can actually increase my power. And if I imagine something as hard as I could, I can increase my power as well. If I combine the two, I can get my power up into the 80,000 range. They're confused, like, what? Earlier, didn't you say even at daytime your power level was only like 50,000? Yes, but that was merely because I was keeping it held back. My full force is immeasurable, an infinite amount of power. No way. So, you're saying your world is normal with this stuff? And then they all ask about Japan, and he's like, what's in Japan? It's the name of a country. Sadly, I cannot tell you of this place. I do not know of it. I've been all around my globe. Perhaps we are all from different worlds. as they all start thinking he's obviously from a different world than they are, but they all think about different places where they're from, and they know, yeah, they're from different worlds. Now, they talk about the waves and all that, and then this is where Escanor says, I understand. Not the MMORPG part, but I understand the waves. It's like clearing a dungeon, and every floor there are different powered monsters. And a wall kept them from attacking each other. It's like they're being let out at the gates. So we're back. Hearing this, they were actually kind of impressed by Escanor, saying he kind of got it. He kind of got it. He's not dumb. He's just really differing in size, I guess. As they noted that he looks way smaller than when they first appeared at noon. He had no neck. His muscles were massive, and the heat he gave off was almost unstoppable. But now that it was nighttime, he gave off next to no heat. He was tiny and scrawny, and he didn't even seem to be anywhere near as prideful as he was in the daytime. So, yeah. And even the same news was spread around about him not knowing anything. But in this version, there's a slight difference. He knows all too much. He knows what kind of people would plan things. The kinds of plans they would have for him. After all, he already dealt with people scheming to kill him. Now, every step he took started to make the ground shake. The next morning, because he admitted this wasn't really normal for him. After all, he was already bigger than the bed he was put in, and that was a whole pain. And then he took his glasses out and kept them on most of the day. And they were like, where is the impudent prince, boy? And then Escanor said, right here, sir. What happened to your size from yesterday? Was it a one-time thing? No, sir. It happens whenever I take these glasses off. My powers are unsealed. Really? And if they are broken, I cannot replace them. These are my only pair left. Gifted to me by Lady Merlin herself. Then being completely confused, like, who's this Lady Merlin? And then he actually said a little bit about the Seven Sins. He wasn't the captain, but he was the strongest. The Demon King was the captain. Well, the new one. Not really Demon King, but still. Alright, so he starts explaining who the Seven Sins were. The Demon King was the captain. Someone with the power of infinite was the glutton. And he explains what each of their marks were for, what happened. The king is actually very impressed by this. And hearing that his was because he broke his brother's arm on accident when he was younger, when his brother wouldn't stop hitting him. It actually kind of surprised him. But still. Then the king said, alright, well, now that we've heard your story, let's pick the teams. And he's like, alright, how do we go about this? I'm not much of a captain, but I could make a few teammate choices. And this is Escanor in his golden armor. Hold on. Dang, I really forgot to put his golden armor. Well, he's wearing a giant set of golden armor. Every step he takes. And it's like, that armor doesn't even fit him. They all start to say, with Escanor saying, the bag is almost magical. Everything in it is contained, even though it's not made to fit such large things. Special magic bag. Holding a lot more than it's supposed to be able to. Understood? They said, yeah, we get it. Now, thing is, just like Rita, this bag was heavy. And only a handful could probably even lift this thing in the Seven Sins world. Much less throw it around over their shoulder like it was nothing. But opening it was pretty dang easy. Now, back to what we were talking about. Back to the what if. Escanor started to try to take steps Now, when he was about to choose, he actually closed his eyes, saying that hearing that they would choose, he'd be like, alright, let's see what happens. He opens his eyes and sees that he's the only one on his team. He starts laughing, saying, ha 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 ha. Ah, so it looks like I'll have to be a loner again. Oh, I'm used to it. And then mine still does the same thing. But in this version, when those balloon things were there, Escanor just gripped his hand and boom! Just ripped them all to shreds, and even went up to level 2, which almost doubled his attack power, which he felt an even more great power. Sunshine wasn't burning him. It was almost as if he was... Oh, there it is. And he looked at his health bar. The closer it was to noon, the hotter he got. But whenever it became noon, he noted that even though he was in the 1 form and the 1 above all form, it didn't drain him too much. It drained a little bit of his health, but there was actually stuff he could take for that, I guess. He said, and in this version, he's very surprised, because usually this would kill him. But it's not killing him. It's not even hurting him. Now, the 1 form wouldn't kill him. It would just very much burn him. Now, the true one is the thing that killed him. So he was relevant about not going into it. But not even a little bit of but only a little bit of stamina being drained and mana. He was impressed. Now, granted, these gauges couldn't hold his own power, but they basically showed what he has, like, holding him to keep him from killing himself again. Now, when he ran out of mana holding his sunlight form, he noticed that's when it started taking away health and burning him. So he decided to put his glasses on, and then geared himself up for fighting. Now, he then proceeds to take out his shield, which he didn't really use to block anything since he didn't need to. But this is when he took it, and he actually transformed it into Divine Shield Axe Rita. As he pulled it out, it was like he didn't have to grip it anymore. It was just like the same shape as Rita, but giant and a shield, which was attached to his wrist, which meant he didn't have to hold it. And he even found out he was able to take it off, but it didn't feel right. He wasn't able to remove it from his body. He was able to pull it just away from different parts to move it around. But this is when something very odd happens. He notices that it contains the heat so he wouldn't burn his allies, but it even absorbed his magic the same way Rita had. And it even fixed the crack. He was very proud of this and happy. But then he thought there was something odd about this girl. She was willing to partner up with him, and she barely does anything. Whatever. He was used to being the most powerful. And he just was really cocky the second anything happened. So much so that when actual wolves attacked them, Escanor just took a few steps and just completely slapped them away. And just stood there in flames, burning them to a crisp. And he actually absorbed them into his shield, creating different styles of shield. But he noticed that if he combined them into the Rita shield, it gave Rita a little bit different advantages. Enough of the wolf stuff, he actually got a cloak of wolf. The wolf cloak. Which allowed him to stalk any prey anything he felt to be prey with way better concealing than his normal ability. Which he was actually impressed. Now, then we start getting to the whole fight with the whole thing that happened. And mine still does this. Only in this version, it didn't work out so well. Because in this version, when that same blacksmith went to pick up Escanor by the collar the way he did to Naofumi, Escanor grabbed him and put him up by the collar and saying, "I didn't do it. And if you want to accuse me as well, we can see how that will work. Armor up, blacksmith." As he threw him backwards, almost putting a hole through the wall where he threw the blacksmith said, "I believe you. You look like you'll need something." "Yes." Then he offered him a green cloak, which kind of got absorbed into the shield. And he said, "I can't go without paying you." And then you hear him say, "Fine, 5 copper. Alright." Now, being as much easy to find as Escanor is compared to Naofumi, stuff went way farther. Like, same stuff, but it was easier to spot him. Like, yeah, the shield was a dead giveaway, but he couldn't hide by concealing the shield the way Naofumi could. He towered over everyone. But he noticed all his armor had also been stolen. Most of his clothes were taken. His Rita wasn't... Like, he took Rita out of its, like, off the shield form and set it down. Because he can hold it, he just can't fight with it. Which was odd to him, as he completely set it down, because he knew he wanted to use it as a decoration one day. Now, he finds out how things have to go down, all that, and he is pissed. Now, if you know anything about Escanor, he's not weak at all. Now, we're going to keep going with this one. So, the same stuff kind of goes down, but in this version, whenever that slave trader approaches him, he does the same stuff he had in canon, but in this version, Escanor gets so much of, like, resources and money, because of how powerful he is compared to Naofumi, that he's able to afford the strongest one. And then he looks at him, saying, "Aw, puppy," to the strongest beast that this guy had, and is like, "What? I don't think I'll take him." Seeing Raftalia coughing actually somewhat reminded him of Merlin. Because Merlin would often work to the point where she got sick, and Escanor would always be there to help her. And Escanor grit his teeth, saying, "That one," pointing to Raftalia, and proceeded to actually take her and get her the medicine stuff the same way Naofumi did, and even feed her. But in this version, anyone who would refuse them service because of who they were completely got looked down upon and said, "Do you really think that'll work?" As his power almost eclipsed the entire country. They instantly would just agree to whatever Escanor said. Now, we've still got a few other things we have to go deal with. Now, the waves go completely different. The first one, he still protects the land the way Escanor had, but in this version, he doesn't need anything to spark the fire. And with Raftalia, he only had to literally just convince her once. Now, Raftalia doesn't see the same thing she saw in Naofumi in Escanor. For Naofumi, she saw love. For Escanor, she sees complete she's just overwhelmed. She doesn't know what to say. She's impressed by him, but she doesn't want to. But it's kind of just more of a... Like, she doesn't need to be his sword. But she still wants to be. Noting that Escanor could only barely even... As Escanor noted that... Even though the only thing he had left was his little clothes... Was the little clothes he was wearing on his back. Which... This is still there, and the other one as well. Like, the ones he was... His clothes were all stolen except for the ones he was wearing, which was this. And the only thing of his... Like, his armor wasn't stolen because of how heavy it was and hard to lift. And he didn't... In this version, he actually sold it. He gave it to the blacksmith. And the blacksmith says, "I'm not going to sell this. It wouldn't be right. You're more of giving it to me to show off, correct?" "Yes." As Escanor had simply gave it to him for him to, like, leave there. And then he actually took his axe, Rita itself, out of the shield and gave it to the blacksmith. Mainly to hold on to, as the mighty weapon of Escanor. He wasn't going... The guy couldn't sell it. It was so heavy no one could pick it up. He highly doubts anyone could even wear the armor. It was so massive. So it was more of just a contribute. Like, he literally just gave it to the dude so the dude could learn about it and try crafting better weapons like it. Now, anytime he would need to be turned or moved, he'd have to call Escanor to move it, but still. So, whenever glass attacks, it goes completely differently. He's only gets taken forever. But then, there's a difference. Escanor took step by step by step, looking down at everyone. And then, the unthinkable happens. He almost, whenever he went up to the ship, which he basically just leaped on there, this version, he's looking down at glass, like she is nothing to him. And then, boom! One shot almost ripped her in half. Even at her most powerful at this point, her best block didn't even slow down Escanor's hit. Her best attack didn't even cut him. And he laughed saying, "Ha ha, itchy," which terrified her, as it was, in this version, noon. Even if the sun was covered, it was still noon. And every step Escanor took almost completely terrified her. Now, he just grits his teeth, pulls a fist back, and boom! And he yells, "Divine Spear, Escanor. Divine Chop, Escanor." He would only use these on people he would need to use them on. And he's only using them in like one brigade each. Like, he's threw away the captain completely with this attack. And then with the other one, he chopped up the Kraken. And with glass, he straight just swung his hand back. Now looking, and as she went flying, he actually used the shield to block an attack that actually could have possibly killed him. But he didn't see it as being worthy of killing him. He used the shield to block it just because he felt like he would need like something to be in the way. Not that it would hurt him, because he didn't want to like have it mess up his clothes. Now, the whole thing with like the dragon was just as easy to get rid of. He basically completely fed it to his shield. Now, whenever anyone went into the blacksmith shop, they saw Rita on the wall. They saw the armor of Escanor on a mannequin with a space for Rita to hold. And then Escanor one day walks in and puts the axe with its holder of the hand, which actually was facing down, to be held like he was about to pull it out of nowhere. Same way of Excalibur and the sword. You'd have to have your hand on it and just tear it out the ground. And there was actually something he said, which he says he actually held a few fundraising events for the Shield Hero that no, he didn't tell anyone was for the Shield Hero. It would take 1 gold to participate, and this is a good bit of money. But the weapon they would be getting would be an absolute amazing weapon, an amazing axe. And the only thing was, you had to be able to pick it up. Anyone would try this, especially since they could turn such a huge profit off the thing. Now, many tried to pick it up. None could. Each hero tried to move the thing. None of them could. Escanor walks in saying, "Haha, so that's what you chose to do whenever I handed you Rita. Makes sense." And then he said, "I'll give it a go. Escanor, we all know you can lift it. Still, it'd be fun." And then he completely just threw his glasses to the guy and said, "Here, take the gold," as he flicked a coin to the guy. Grabbing Rita and just straight up throwing it over his shoulder, saying, "Ha ha ha, it is my weapon after all." And he stood next to the statue of the basically mannequin of him holding his armor, saying, "Ha ha ha, my armor as well. So you really were willing to give this away if anyone could pick up my weapon?" And then he said, "Escanor, no one's been able to move the thing. I know. You're the only one who's been able to even get it off the ground. I know. Look. Didn't think anyone could do it. I was waiting for you to get back, but yeah. we raised this much money. Gave to Escanor so Escanor could do a few things, a few adjustments, full that, all that, and whatever. Now, Escanor knew about size changing clothes and all that, and he just stretched out his clothes and put them back on. Noting that it wouldn't work like that with Philo, as he still raced with using Philo, but he used his nighttime form with his glasses on, so he could actually do anything, and still use the same shield abilities Naofumi did, so he could come in first place. But in this version, there's a small difference. Even though he still made it to first place, all that magic didn't go the same way. Now, Naofumi wasn't going to become the leader of this village or anything. He was willing to do anything just to get out, just to leave. He just didn't want anyone to control this place. And this is where he wound up leaving his most, whatever. So yeah, basically the whole thing outside that goes with like the way it was with Naofumi. But then we're gonna have the ocean arc. This one goes quite differently, because when they're still hunting, Escanor doesn't even get seasick. And Raphtalia, because like she had to deal with the wagon same way as in Canon, she didn't get sick at all. Now, there's just a few differences. Now, there was a whole thing that they actually started to step and step, not even caring. Now, as Escanor was to go in there, he had to deal with Lark. And he dealt with Lark pretty dang easily, same way Naofumi had. And whenever Naofumi was dealing with this whole event, they were surprised. Because not only was Naofumi way different than Escanor is in canon, like, Escanor's handling it the same way Naofumi did, basically. Now, whenever they're there and they find all this stuff out, and Escanor still put on that thing, and he still moved the rocks the same way he had in canon, same way Naofumi had, but in this version, whenever they waltz in there and find out that there's another timer, Escanor actually has a smirk on his face, and the water around him starts to heat up and even boil, as he started to even tear the scuba suit around him, as it was starting to mold to his shape of complete muscle. Now, it was starting to rip and tear, but this wasn't changing anything, except for the fact that Escanor now had to deal with the fact that he had no swimsuit. Like, he saw his trunks, but he didn't have any like underwater swimming gear other than this, so that was a whole event. But he still chose to use it, as he went and told the queen all that happened, and he was completely terrifying everyone. Now, the fight with Larkin, Glass, and that other one goes way differently, because Escanor still made the same stuff. But in this version, he imbued it with the power of a sun, to sun slap people. But in this version, small difference, or big difference, depending on how you want to look at it, Escanor completely sends each attack flying. None of them can even hurt him. And he even proceeded to almost kill Lark and Glass, because whenever like they hit him with alcohol and stuff, Escanor is a light drinker, but still, he doesn't drink alcohol very often in this version. Like, he's a lightweight, but he can't really drink that much. But he doesn't drink at all. He ate one of these berries, almost sloshed him out, but he stood there, having the power of the sun burning away at the alcohol, saying, "This stuff is way weaker than what I'm used to. The stuff I make is even stronger than this." And then, he finally, at the end of the series, still does the same thing Naofumi does, and takes care of the same village. That's the end of this What If, guys. Goodbye.